Hi, my name is John Garfield. This is the Releasing Kings newsletter. It's October 12th, 2014. This week I want to talk to you about hide and seek in corporate culture. I was asked at work, this is an engineering company, uh, in front of a group of 50 engineers to do a safety presentation. So I am bored stiff with safety presentations, so I'm doing it on heart. And what I've seen in corporate culture is, I work in a typical one. There are large numbers of good people in a beehive of activity and communication. Engineering, operations, and project types are well educated and trained in the corporate culture. Most come from 16 years of education, all the way through high school and college, which prepared them for tasks. They can read complicated literature, they can follow directions, and they can get work done. Here's a recent quote from our local paper about an external audit regarding a failure attributed to communication. Now, this is in context of a plant that we're building here that is running 10 years behind schedule and is overrun about $10 billion. Okay, so it's reviewed by the Defense Nuclear Safety Board. Listen to this one sentence that was in our local paper. Worker reluctance to raise issues or management reluctance to listen to concerns might have contributed to those technical issues, safety board members said. Oh, really? So, communication among well-educated people is obviously a shortcoming, and there's a good reason. These educated engineers and managers were taught how to read words and understand definitions, but they have no knowledge of how to read people, find meaning, or hear one another's hearts. So they miss one another all the time. Just beneath the surface of most of these people, and they're good people, they're not dysfunctional people, they're nice people, they're hardworking, but in general, most of them feel unheard, unappreciated, unknown, and untapped. And the reason is because no one knows their hearts. So remember when if you've ever played hide and seek with a 2-year-old, they they really want to be found. I mean, the nightmare scenario for a 2-year-old is to hide someplace and never be found. So when you're playing with them, they'll run off, and when you see them, I mean, it's not like when they see that you see them, they understand they've been found. But if you say, "I see you," they will say, "Here I am." And the reality is, and I've come to this awareness fairly recently in my own life, and that is that I personally am a little boy looking for love, and I'm willing to admit that. Jesus said we should be like little children. And the reality is, this sophisticated corporate culture that I work in is really a lot of little boys and little girls looking for love. It's not more sophisticated than that. And the reality is that there is no manager that has any training in how to read people or understand hearts. So that everybody that works out there, and I'm saying most everybody, because the majority do, feel like no one understands their hearts. No one's even trying to understand their hearts. And in fact, they themselves don't understand their own hearts. So there's this feeling of coming to work every day, getting the paycheck, doing the best you can, and going home and hoping to find satisfaction somewhere else. And the reality is that God has wired every one of us with some genius. And the fact is that our culture, and I explain this more in the newsletter, so I encourage you to read it. So what I did was, in this newsletter, is just outline the points I want to make in the safety presentation. So it's a very interesting read, and I encourage you to read it. I'm not going to read it for you today. But the fact is, our enlightened reasoning culture produces left-brained oxen. So this idea that we just see objective facts, make logical claims, come to intellectual beliefs, and we are therefore motivated to do things, is the whole message of the Enlightenment that came to us 300 years ago or more. And I want to suggest that it produces servants, or oxen is the metaphor I'm using. And their left brain, they're obedient, they're constrained, they're hidden, they're logical, they're practical, they see details, and they think in words and concepts. And I want to suggest that that paradigm is simply not true. That everything we think and say and do originates in our hearts. That we have had a hard experience in our past or in our present, doesn't matter. It's all present as far as we're concerned. And those experiences cause us to have beliefs in our hearts or subconscious. And those beliefs come out as subjective claims, and we use our minds to rationalize them. In other words, we don't use facts to come to conclusions. The conclusions are already made in our hearts. And we use our minds to make them sound smart. Engineers do this all the time. And that's why, if someone comes to me with a new bolt and said, well, should I use stainless or carbon steel? I don't have any history on bolts and whether they're stainless, I could care less. But you can be guaranteed that my heart has an opinion about that person, and I will draw a conclusion about that person that from a heart level that has no basis in fact or reality. So from a safety standpoint, we have to realize that facts do not change hearts, okay? And we're all vulnerable to deception by our hearts. So in humility, we need to have peer reviews and buddy systems to watch out for one another. Just from the standpoint of caring about one another, we should watch out for one another. And we should realize that we are not computers, that facts don't change hearts. Hearts always win over heads, over minds. So things like procedures, standards, policies, affirmations, goals, resolutions, pep rallies, and accountability and motivational seminars do not touch our hearts and do not change us in one bit. Amen? Our culture produces oxen, and we're plodding away in our left brain fashion, immune from attempts to change. So how do we become aligned? How do we become right-brained? How do we get connected with our hearts? Because that's the goal, to have our hearts and minds aligned in the same direction so we don't commit this self-sabotage and relational suicide. So one is teamwork. To realize that our professional culture is mental, and to hear the hearts of our coworkers. To be able to say at work some version of, I see you, I see your heart, and to have people respond and say, here I am, here's my heart, and communicate at a heart level. And so to do that, we have to have a dream. God, we all have an experience from God because He's the one that created us. He wired us with something about the kingdom in our hearts, and if we can tap that, that's what's really cool about being a Christian, about life in general. And we can use that as a basis to forgive things in the past and to let them go. We actually have to trade up in our hearts. And growth comes when we see the purpose behind all that trauma. And this whole idea of being a lion or being connected with our hearts is what causes us to be safer, happier, and more productive. Let me share one final thought, and I'm skipping around here, and that is we are lion kings when we connect with our hearts, and we're oxen when we don't. We're barbarians. We're relational barbarians. And that's our corporate culture. It's heartless. The paradox is that once we accept who we really are and walk in our own greatness, in our calling, in our destiny, our hearts guide both the lion toward genius and the ox or mind in service. And oxen make, frankly, great dictators, but heartless leaders. And that's who most of our leaders are in corporate culture right now. And to realize that our intellect is a valuable tool. I'm not intellectual at all. I have a chemical engineering degree. That our intellect is a valuable tool that serves a very important function, but who we really are is a matter of the heart. And our ability to release our hearts to lead allows us also to release our ox to serve. That's the genius of getting connected with your own heart. You will be yourself, and you will serve others from the standpoint of helping them to connect with their own hearts. That's huge. Have a great week. Take a look at the newsletter. I've attached all the details, and there's some great graphics and links in there as well. Amen. Have a great week.